The border town woke slow that morning, with light sliding over the dry hills and into the market like warm honey. Stalls opened one by one. Canvas flaps went up, the smell of coffee and fresh fry bread mixed with dust and wood smoke. A ranch hand who kept mostly to himself walked along the row of tables, holding his hat by the brim, looking like he had not yet decided whether to buy a rope or a new pair of gloves. People in town knew his face, though not his story. He was the kind of man who spoke little and listened often. When others told jokes, he smiled, and when talk got loud, he stepped back. He was not easily noticed unless you were the kind of person who watched carefully. If you were that kind of person, you might notice he always made space for others to pass and always paid on time. He stopped near a beadwork stall, where bright colors shone like small suns. The stall belonged to a young Apache woman who worked with steady hands. Her table held bracelets, earrings, and a long strip of beaded cloth that looked like a river made of glass. She arranged her pieces in neat lines each morning, with soft cloth under each one so the edges would not rub. She had wrapped her hair with a ribbon the color of a storm cloud and wore a necklace with 3 small shells. People came to her table to look, to admire, and to buy gifts for wives, sisters, and children. She welcomed them with a calm hello and a kind tone. Every piece had a story if you were patient enough to ask. By the time the sun lifted above the roofs, the market was awake. A baker laughed with a customer about the shape of a crooked loaf. A boy ran past with a bundle of letters. A woman folded shawls at the stall next to the beadworker and told a story about a hawk that had flown close over her head last week, so near she heard the wind in its feathers. The ranch hand lingered. He was not there for jewelry, although he picked up a bracelet and admired the work. He was there because he liked the quiet order at that table. He liked the way the beadworker made small things strong. At the end of the row, 2 cowhands from out of town drifted toward the market like tumbleweeds blown by a gust. They laughed too loud and bumped shoulders as they looked around. Their voices carried above the normal market sounds. They were not cruel people at heart, and yet in that way some travelers have. They seem to forget that a place belongs to those who live in it. They walked in with a sense that everything was a show put on for them. A few sellers glanced up, measured the mood, and looked back to their work. The cowhands stopped at the beadwork table and leaned in too close. They handled the bracelets without asking. One lifted a long strip of beads and swung it like a lasso, then set it down carelessly. The beadworker kept her voice even and asked them, please, to be gentle with the items. The words were calm, but the ranch hand could hear a thin string of worry behind them. He did not like the way the table trembled when the men leaned on it. He did not like the way they spoke, as if the woman could not hear. He stepped closer and set his hat on his head. He did not puff up his chest or speak in a loud voice. He simply placed himself in the space as if he belonged there and said, these are made with care. Let's give them the same care. His tone was friendly, practical. He moved a small dish of rings away from the table's edge as if he were part of the stall. The cowhands blinked at him, surprised that someone had appeared out of quiet. The beadworker gave the ranch hand a brief look, one that said both thank you and be careful. She did not need a champion, but a respectful neighbor is never unwelcome. Her aunties were never far either. One auntie sold woven belts 2 stalls down. Another kept herbs and teas in jars and knew by scent alone what calmed a cough or brightened a tired mind. They had old eyes that saw small changes, and those eyes were already watching. The ranch hand asked the cowhands where they were headed. He remarked on the weather, the long road, the hard work of travel. His words were simple and plain. A gentle rope cast over the moment to pull it into calmer water. The cowhands eased a little. The beadworker straightened her display and set the bead river back into a pleasing pattern. She offered to show them a piece that would suit the road, something strong, simple, and not easily lost. She laid out a narrow band, blue and white, with a small clasp. One of the cowhands liked it. His face changed. You could see the boy he had been, the one who had saved up coins for a ribbon at a county fair. He asked the price. She told him. He fumbled in his pocket, and the coins did not quite add up. He looked embarrassed, then tried to cover it with a joke. The joke made his friend laugh in the wrong way. The friend lifted another piece without asking. His hand shook a little. It was not anger. It was more like a restless energy that did not know where to go. The ranch hand breathed in slow. He asked the friend where he had come from that morning. He pointed to the water barrel at the corner of the market and said that the barrel was fresh if anyone needed a drink. He said it like a person offering a chair to a tired visitor. The friend hesitated, put the piece back, and said a quick word of thanks. The beadworker's shoulders softened by a hair's width. Her auntie with the tea jars moved a little closer and began to talk, low and soothing, about the different herbs she had. When a person has something to hold, it is harder for them to grab what is not theirs. She held out a jar for the friend to smell. He sniffed, smiled, and called it forest in a jar. Everyone laughed, and the tight thread in the air loosened. But quiet does not always settle at once. Across the market, a cart rolled over a stone. The sudden clatter startled those nearby. The friend flinched. The narrow band slid toward the table's edge once more. The ranch hand reached and caught it before it fell. In that same small sweep, he bumped his arm hard against the corner of the stall. He pulled back and rubbed the spot, but said nothing. The beadworker moved the band farther from the edge and placed a cloth under it. "Safe now," she said with a calm smile that made it true. The cowhand, who could not pay the full price, stood there, face open and honest. He looked at the band, then at the small pile of coins in his palm, then at the band again. The ranch hand saw the choice: to walk away feeling less than or to be treated with respect. The ranch hand reached into his own pocket. He did not make a speech. He did not try to look grand. He just added the missing coins to the pile, one by one, the way you top off a water bucket without spilling. The buyer looked up, surprised. "I'll pay you back," he said. The ranch hand nodded. "You'll pay it forward," he replied. The buyer smiled, real and bright, and took the band with both hands. The friend looked at the bead river on the table, eyes softer now. "That must take patience," he said. The beadworker explained how each bead had a place, how a pattern came to her like a song, how she followed it until it felt right in her chest. The friend listened, quiet. The auntie with the woven belts added a story about sitting by the fire and learning to make even rows, how fingers learn rhythm the way feet learn to walk. The market sounds rolled on around them, the chatter of neighbors, a dog's bark, a bell down the street. But at the stall, time slowed. A moment later, the town officer strolled by. He had a friendly face and a tidy notebook. He paused at the stall because he liked the beadwork and because he liked peace. He greeted the beadworker and nodded to the ranch hand. He gave the cowhands a look that said, "I see you and I see the good choice you're making now." The cowhand straightened up, as people do when they feel seen in a fair way. The officer asked the beadworker if all was well. She said yes. He tipped his hat and moved on, leaving a small bubble of order behind him. The ranch hand's arm still throbbed from the bump against the table, though he kept his face smooth. He asked for a cup of the auntie's tea to settle himself. She poured a blend that tasted clean and warm, with a hint of mint and a memory of rain. He thanked her and drank. The beadworker reorganized a few items, making sure each piece had a safe spot. The friend who had been restless stood back, hands in his pockets, head tilted as if seeing the stall for the first time. The sun climbed. Shadows shortened. The cowhands said their goodbyes and set off toward the road with calmer steps than they had arrived. The buyer touched the band on his wrist like a promise to himself. The friend carried, very carefully, a small pouch of tea the auntie had gifted him, with instructions on how to steep it for a quiet evening. He woke to soft light moving through the brush shelter roof, like water shining over stones. For a long breath he did not remember where he was. Then the smells came back to him. The clean scent of damp cloth, a hint of mint tea, and the warm dust of the market. He tried to sit up too fast and felt a firm hand on his shoulder. 4 Apache women stood near him, the beadworker, her 2 aunties, and the elder healer. They were calm, steady, and watchful, as if they had been standing there since the first bird call of morning. No one rushed him. No one made a noise bigger than the moment could hold. The elder gave him a small nod that meant, "Take your time." He let his breath fall into an easy rhythm and found his place again. Like a rider settling into a saddle after a long rest, the beadworker asked how his arm felt. He rolled it gently. It ached, but the ache had turned from a sharp buzz to a warm hum like a fire that had died down to safe coals. He thanked them. The auntie with the tea jars set a small cup in his hand and said the blend would help the body remember calm. The other auntie, the one who sold belts, handed him a square of flatbread with a little honey. She said a day is better when it begins with something simple and good. He took a bite and the honey tasted like a friendly sun. He realized he had fallen asleep the afternoon before and someone had covered him with a woven blanket. The blanket felt like it had a story of its own, and he felt careful around it as one is careful with a good tool. They did not ask for thanks. They did not turn him into a grand tale. They treated him as a guest who had made a small mistake by pushing his body too far, and who had earned a quiet place to rest. The elder spoke in a voice that made even the market sound step softly. She said, "In this place we keep certain ways. We look after each other. We keep our words plain. We keep our hands calm. If you stay a little longer, you will follow our ways." He nodded. He did not feel scolded. He felt guided. He liked the feeling of being given clear rules that were made to keep everyone safe and steady. He promised to listen first and move second, and the elder's eyes softened. It was early and the market had not opened yet. The beadworker invited him to walk with them before the day grew busy. They moved slowly along the rows, straightening a cloth here, tightening a rope there, picking up a stray paper that the wind had lost. He learned by watching. He saw how the beadworker checked each item on her table with a small touch that said, "I see you." He saw how the auntie with belts kept her goods rolled and tied so that a curious hand could look without making a mess. He saw how the auntie with tea placed small signs that were kind to the eyes. The elder moved at a pace that made every corner seem settled after she passed. When a cartwheel squeaked, the belt auntie wiped the rim. When a knot looked tired, the beadworker changed it for one that would hold all day. They were not fixing problems. They were tending to a living place. As the sun climbed, the town officer came by with his notebook tucked in his vest. He greeted them and asked if the day was starting smooth. The elder said yes, and then added that they wished to speak about market care, so that everyone who sells and buys would enjoy the space. The officer listened and wrote down their simple rules. Ask before touching. Pay with a clear mind, keep voices friendly, solve small troubles with steady words. Call him for help when something feels like too much. He said he would post these notes near the water barrel and remind folks as he walked. He did not carry a heavy tone. He carried a helpful one, like a person who ties a gate so it will not swing in the wind. The ranch hand stood a little back, hands quiet, eyes open. He felt proud to see that order could be shaped with plain talk and kind firmness. By late morning, the market was a river of footsteps and slow smiles. The beadworker's table shone again, bright and neat. A teacher returned to buy the river pattern piece she had admired the day before. A group of travelers came by with soft greetings and curious questions. The auntie with tea let them smell jars and told them how to brew a cup that keeps the heart steady on a long road. The auntie with belts showed how a good weave holds even when pulled. The elder moved between stalls with the kind of presence that made people stand a little taller and speak a little nicer. The ranch hand, still a guest, asked what small jobs he could do that would not get in the way. He was given a hammer to fix a loose board on a stall corner, then a length of twine to tie a curtain so it would not slap in the breeze. Each task was simple, and each task mattered. Near midday, the two cowhands from the day before returned, but with a different air, like weather that had learned from a long night. The one who had bought the narrow band wore it on his wrist and touched it now and then, as if to remind himself to be the kind of person who keeps a promise. The friend walked more slowly. He carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth. They greeted the beadworker and the aunties with clear eyes. The buyer laid coins on the table, more than enough for the band. The beadworker smiled and counted back the extra as his fare. The friend opened his bundle. Inside were items the wind had almost taken yesterday. A few glass beads caught by the cloth, a small clasp, a tiny silver charm. He said he had found them at the market's edge and wanted them back where they belonged. His voice was quiet but sure. The elder thanked him in a way that felt like open sky after shade. The officer, who had been near, noticed and gave a small nod of respect that needs no words. They talked for a few minutes about travel, about the best places to water a horse, about a good stretch of road with fine views. The auntie with tea offered the friend a small packet marked Evening Calm. She told him how to brew it and said it was a gift for a better rest. He tried to pay, but she shook her head gently. "You already paid," she said, and everyone knew she meant with steady feet and clear hands. The ranch hand watched the exchange and felt the market settle even more, like a quilt smoothed by careful hands until all the corners lie flat. After the cowhands left, the day rolled on with a feeling of agreement. Children stopped to watch the beadworker set a new line of beads in a pattern that looked like a path after light rain. An old man told a funny story about a goat that learned to untie knots. The officer posted the market care notes in 2 places and read them out once with a friendly voice that made people smile instead of frown. The ranch hand, encouraged by the elder, built a small display stand from leftover wood. He shaped the edges smooth and sanded the top until it looked like a shallow riverbed, ready to hold bright pieces. When he set it on the table, the beadworker tried it out by laying a necklace across the curve. It looked right. She said it would help people see the work more clearly. He felt something ease inside him, a soft unlock he had not known he needed. The turning point came in a quiet moment late in the afternoon. The elder asked the ranch hand to walk with her to the shade of a cottonwood. They stood where the air moved a little cooler. She spoke slowly, not to make a long speech, but to make each word land clean. She said, "Courage is a good thing. Respect is a good thing. Either one alone can tip a person off balance. Together they help a person walk true." He stood and let the words settle. He thought about how quick he had been to step in the day before, even with a kind heart. He understood now that a kind heart is strongest when it makes room for others to lead, especially in their own place. He told her that, and she smiled with her eyes. She said, "You are learning our steps." "That is good. Now keep learning."